Hey, I'm hanging out here down at this park. It's called Captain Williams Park, I believe, or James Williams Park. It's down near Camas, Washington. And, it's got a nice little trail. And it follows right along the Columbia River there. It's got tennis courts well, not tennis courts, but badminton courts and little areas to hang out and a little beach down there. It's really nice. It's a great place to kind of take a load off, even though I grew up in this area, kind of thinking of the Columbia River as a very polluted place. It's actually not that bad. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Columbia River being, radioactive because of the, nuclear storage up the way. And let's just say that further upriver, a couple hundred miles, there is definitely a nuclear, waste repository. The Hanford plant, I believe, is what it was that was shut down. But they stored also a bunch of radioactive debris there after World War II, I think it was, or maybe it was later. But there's a ton of radioactive crap up there. And it's leaching into the ground, and they can't clean it up because it's too dangerous and you can only spend a few minutes there. And as an individual person, you can only spend just a couple minutes there before it's considered a deadly dose. However, as far as I know, it has not yet leached anywhere near the groundwater or become an issue within the river itself. Now, there are a few rivers leading into here: the John Day River, Hood River, the Snake River. All these things lead eventually into the Columbia, which becomes a very large river, the largest west of the Mississippi. And the river can be a little greenish. And if you go down to the Columbia below the Willamette, let me just say that's where it can get a little nasty, and probably where it got its bad reputation. The Willamette River was once a horrendous river. In fact, it was so toxic they would regularly warn people against swimming in it, especially after rains. And they still do, because of what I learned. I actually took a class in my alternative high school about it was called Urban Waterways and Wetlands, and it was a class about nature and the environment in local areas. And they taught us about CSO, which is combined sewage overflow. Basically, every time it rains heavy, the sewers can't handle the overflow, so they combine with the rainwater can't handle. The sewers can't handle the rainwater, so it overflows, and it's combined sewage overflow, and all the sewage runs into the rivers instead of going to the sewage treatment plant. And that is disgusting. And they've tried to fix a lot of this, but it still happens. So the Willamette River is huge, and that's in Portland, and that if you're north of or east of there, like I am right now, it's not as big of a deal, because you don't have to worry about the Willamette. It's just the rivers further up, which are much less populated, even though there's a lot of cows. Now, the cows do leave a lot of shit in the rivers up north from here, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just cow pies. They're mostly diluted. Up north of here, we've got the Bonneville Dam, and that's a unfortunate dam which blocks off, that and the Dalles Dam block off the Celilo Falls, which was part of the Columbia Gorge for a long time, which is where all the Native Americans would come and gather to fish, travel for hundreds of miles to get to. Celilo Falls was like the prime fishing area over here, and all the salmon had to come up through there. And once they built the dam, let's just say that the salmon have been much less than they used to be. People don't see monstrous runs in the Columbia anymore, and that's unfortunate. But it is a mighty river. It's a beautiful river. We've got sturgeon the size of trees out here. I mean, they're huge. There's all kinds of stories from when they were building the dam of seeing these giant sturgeon they thought were like trees down there. And yeah, the Columbia has a very unique history. But I guess a lot of people might think of Lewis and Clark traveling along this area way back in the day. And the river's always been a pretty rough one. And so I guess it's not as polluted as people might think. It's very refreshing right now. In fact, my pants are wet from the Columbia River and my legs are not burning from any toxic acidity. So I think I'm doing okay. When I was a kid, I used to jump in the Willamette River off of these big things we called the barrels. They were these old, like, this old barge depot where they would, I don't know what they stored them with, but it was pretty high, and sometimes you get water down your nose and throat, and you're thinking, you know, what kind of diseases am I inhaling here? Because most of the shit, honestly, these rivers are cleaner than they ever were in the past. They used to be so much worse, and we've really come a long way in helping our environment and improving you know, our own waterways. You know, back in the early 1900s to you know, between the 1900 and like 1940, the Willamette River was so disgusting that they had warning signs. You weren't supposed to swim. It was like the Hudson in New York. I mean, all these rivers were just sewage. There were no regulations, no rules, and it was the same way with the air. It was just full of soot and disgusting fucking smog all winter long because everybody was burning you know, coal and oil all winter long to stay warm and using their fireplaces. And so I guess to say some of these, quote, you know, liberal regulations can be a little overboard, but some of them actually have really helped to bring us into a much cleaner environment that we do deserve. It sucks because we have to do business differently, which means that can be more money for the companies, more money for us, but to be able to go swim in your own rivers and look up at your own skies, it's priceless, my friends. It's priceless. So, you know, I guess before we go scoff at, like, you know, programs to, you know, protect places, I understand that there's right of way, that people need to be able to still make a living and still prospect for minerals. People need to still be able to use oil, but also we've got to start looking at things a little differently and the things that we have done to improve places, so I can actually take my own kids down to the Columbia River and swim without worrying about them being either polluted by some weird bacteria or coming home glowing from the radioactivity out east. So with that, I bid you adieu. Peace out.